I am Captain.
And the masters of the universe.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power.
At the end of the 21st century, the Earth was invaded by a horde of mutant spider crabs under the control of the Venomoid warlord, Darkon.
G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe.
What is going on, everybody? Wait, another night, another stream. We're at episode 5. Hope you guys liked the little intro I had for you guys. This is the history of cartoons. That's the topic of today. But before we get into that, let's talk about something else. Yes, I have to do the marketing first. Please hit the like, sub, and subscribe button. If you haven't already, do it. Simple as that. Do it. And I'm also on Facebook. Again, if you haven't hit the like button, why not? You better hit the like button. Anyway, so how is everybody doing it? If everybody is doing well, can you hear me? Hit a 1 plus 1. Yep, like 101 plus 1. I don't want to put a 0 in between. I want 1 plus 1. That's what I want to see today. So let's talk about how are we going first of all. To my guests show up. My guess, my week's going pretty well overall. Long day today, a little sweaty, a little tired. So actually, my first guest finally arrived. Let's get him in the stream.
Test.
To get him rock and rolling, and he is the CEO, COO, the mouth of the West. He is former owner of Blockbuster, and I am talking about Kelly. What's up, my man?
Hey, what's up?
Your volume is a little low. If you can adjust that on your mic.
You got it. How's that?
That's perfect, actually.
Great.
How
So
was
yeah,
your-
never owned Blockbuster. Definitely worked there for 20 years. So.
I'm gonna say you owned it. It sounds better for my audience.
All right, I'm former owner. Okay.
There you go. There you go. How was your day off? How was your weekend so far?
It's been good. Just recouping a little bit and working on some projects.
Sweet.
It's always good when you get some stuff done.
Nice.
What about you?
Long day, bro. It's just another day, another paradise. How'd you like my little
Guess so.
The little intro I had there with all the cartoons, the little video for everybody?
I missed that. I didn't get
You missed it? You know, when everybody starts showing back in, I'm gonna show it one more time. So here's a question for you: how good are you with cartoons? And I mean anime included too. That's to me, it's cartoon too.
So anime, everything.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything. Big fan of classic cartoons. Like the classic stuff, like Looney Tunes. Some of the animated features. I like what I think was the resurgence of Disney. Little Mermaid, that time period leading up through Pixar. Some of that animation, stop motion stuff. I like some of the Aardman Studios stuff, and so a little bit of everything. I like a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
I'm not a snob.
So my fondest memories, and probably my best memories, was sitting in front of the TV, hear Ogres, watching Ninja Turtles, Thundercats, Silverhawks, and this is one you probably guys don't know. Remember this one? Saber Riders and the Star Sheriff. I actually had a clip in there in my thing. Have you heard of that one?
No, I never heard of Saber Riders.
Oh my god, it was a very good anime. I don't think I would consider cartoon, but cartoon anime. To me, let's have that discussion very fast. Do you consider anime and cartoon under the same topic?
Well, yeah. I mean, anime specifically just refers to animation that comes from Japanese from Japan. That's specific. That's why eventually it became kind of like the term Japanimation. So for it to be anime, it has to be animated from Japan. Now there's a number of things that are particular to anime. You know, like anime does a lot of real detailed work in the animation, right? And the way they're able to do that is based upon like the animation style. Like in the United States, that they do what's called on the ones and twos, which means that every 1 or 2 frames you're going to get a new image.
Mm-hmm.
But in Japan, animation and anime, they do it on the 3s, which means that it's every 3 frames you're going to get a new image, which gives them so much more time to put in detail. That's why some of those studios in Japan have such great work, because the detail can be in each image. So.
Before we move on, Kelly, do me one favor, because
Yeah.
your mic is going in and out. Like, one minute I can hear you fine, and you're like here.
Yeah, it might be my Wi-Fi. I think my computer is connected to my Wi-Fi right now. It might be causing me some issues.
I have my computer's connected to Wi-Fi. It doesn't give me problems. So. But
Oh,
Yeah.
Mine does.
on the channel, and hopefully he's watching. We have a thing called the CQ curse. CQ is one of my best friends. He does a show called Pop Culture Warrior. When he first started his stream, he had every single problem. So when I have a question now, and I evolve those problems, I go to CQ. So this is CQ problem.
CQ help.
So my first memories of anime, of course I'm talking about now, it was early 2000s, Toonami. Do you remember that?
What was it?
Toonami. Do you remember that? So Toonami was a thing on Cartoon Network that show a block of
Oh.
animations.
Yeah.
It was-
Actually, I mean, that's a little bit after my time, but I do remember that time period. I kind of missed out on the whole Cartoon Network thing.
Oh man, you have no idea what you missed.
Yeah.
That was literally one of the good ones. So a lot of people's first experience with anime was Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. I didn't like Dragon Ball when it was in Greece, and I had it before it even came to the States. I wasn't into that at the moment. I got into it with Gundam. I don't know if you ever heard of that one.
Oh yeah. Gundam. Yeah.
Gundam was one of my favorite ones. Gundam Win is literally, in my opinion, and again, I have probably a soft spot for it because I am a huge Gundam fan. Gundam Wing is probably my favorite series from all of them. Again, that got me in the series, so I might be a little favoritism to that.
I admit, I'm wearing this is an Avatar hat.
Oh, I know what it is.
So I was late to the party on Avatar, The Last Airbender. But my kids really liked it a lot, and even as adults, they were just like, "You're gonna love it if you just watch it." So I finally broke down and started watching it and kind of gobbled that up. Love the Avatar.
See, the Avatar, I kind of like had hit and I don't say hit, I don't mix emotions with it. It was good, but I didn't think it was the greatest personally. I didn't like the storyline too much because I feel like as a martial artist, I feel like they were making fun of us a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Really? Well, I mean, there was the way it was done. It was definitely designed to be, it was a heavy story.
Agree.
Really, as far as the whole Fire Nation and the whole bit. But you had the trio of the characters, and it was based. There was a lot of humor based on them, and so I think there was a lot of humor in the characters reacting to the world around them, as opposed to making fun of the world. But it certainly was a much more lighthearted romp when it comes to anime. It was no Akira, or even in some regards. My Hero Academy, right? So that's pretty, it can be pretty dark in and of itself.
Oh, I totally agree.
What it is.
I'll give you another one that's pretty dark too, and people don't realize it. It's actually Naruto. The first series, at least first season 1. I call it two because I call it first series because I went Naruto, Shirbing, and Naruto. No, I went to Naruto Boruto later. But with the Naruto one, there's some gruesome ones if you watch the unrated one. And the one that didn't air in the States, like they're literally fighting, and people are dying.
Yeah.
Literally, the Hokage, and at one scene, he literally dies to protect his village. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, I never watched Naruto. It's just. Once again, animation or anime kind of really became really popular a little bit after
your time.
I was, after I had, time to watch. When I was a kid, I remember when I was in it was probably 4th or 5th grade, and I would race home from school and couldn't wait to watch. What was it called? Battle
of the Planets?
Battle of the Planets. Yeah. Yeah. And, as a kid, you don't realize it, but I would miss some episodes. I would get home. I'd get to see the last half episode. And at the end of it was Earth only has 200 days left. And I thought there was an episode for every day, as a kid, not realizing that, the next episode would be there's 150 days left,
Mm-hmm.
But that was my first real taste of anime. I thought that was, just
that was a good series.
The
original series was good. Even when they started remaking it in early 2000s, they did a really good freaking job with it too.
I saw some of the remake stuff. I even saw the Japanese film that they made out of it called the
Gatchaman?
What was the name of the ship? It was the name of the ship.
The only one I remember was Gatchaman.
Yamato.
I remember that one.
That was Battle Beyond the Stars, but they made it into a live action film.
Mm-hmm.
Really well done. Battleship Yamato is what it's called, because that was the name of the ship that they unearthed to take it across to get to Iskandar. Remember that there was the girl. Remember. What's that?
I don't remember that one. I do remember briefly watching a reruns in Greece of Astro Boy.
Astro Boy, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they did a remake actually recently, a couple of years back, of a show, and it was actually I caught a couple of episodes. It wasn't too bad actually. It was okay, but the most I would say the real good memory of mine I remember watching was a lot of Disney stuff. The old VHS movies used to come out. Those were the ones I used to get, and some of the original Popeyes, original Mickey's, and again, those were all reruns in Greece. I remember watching on a channel called Junior TV. And fun fact, this guy was running that channel illegally with no permits for over 20 years, and he finally got caught. I'm like, what? When I went back to Greece, I always, when I visit Greece, I still put it on because, what? That's memory. So I'm going to put Junior TV on. I don't give a shit. I'm too old for that crap. And side note, I don't think nobody's too old for that stuff. I think everybody's old enough to watch it whenever they want to.
I agree with that.
my best friend George agrees. If he's listening, shout out George. And I told him like, yeah, what happened to Junior TV? He go, oh, he got caught with no permits. Like what? That's where I discovered freaking Saber Riders. And again, it was all reruns. Keep that in mind. It was dubbed in Greek. So when I saw it first time in English, it was like, it felt weird. It felt so weird. I remember
that's the history for all of us, right? Like when I was a kid, it was Saturday morning cartoons, right? There was no cable, there was no channel that had cartoons. But on Saturday morning, you got up early because you knew that there were certain times, certain shows were coming on. Like for me, the best one was the Looney Tune hour, where you were going to get all the classic Bugs Bunny and Looney Tune characters. And but you'd have your Hanna-Barbera hour, and you never had a situation where it was like you had your own channel, and you only had one day. It was Saturday. You better get up. You want to see it. Looks like Paul's in the house. That's Paul, right?
What's up?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, I'm putting him in right now. All right, guys. I want to say a big shout out to the president of the 9Bs, the unforgivable, less hair, and the smartest person in the room, probably my brother Paul, and my co-host of the Great Line.
Well, I try not to be the smartest in the room. I learned that lesson a long time ago. But
hey, somebody has to be better looking at least in here.
Paul.
Yeah,
it's the 7B network, by the way.
7. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a 9B.
Nope.
All right. I'll doubt.
We may expand in the future. We're starting with 7 for right now. We may expand as needed as we grow to further delineate ourselves. But 7B seems to be appropriate at this point. Nice.
That's all I have to say to that. Anyway, before we get too far ahead, I don't mean to cut you off, Kelly, but Paul, what is your fondest and earliest memories as a child of cartoons? And it could be anime too. It doesn't matter. Either way is fine.
Man, well, I didn't get exposed to anime until I was an adult. And what I mean by that is a lot of those shows that were like in the 70s, I know like Battle of the Planets might have been one of the first ones.
We were just talking about that, actually.
I think Gigantor, I think, was another one. I didn't know that was anime at the time. And so I didn't find out until an adult, like what Gotcha Man was, for example, with the whole Battle of the Planets thing. So anime, that came certainly much later. I was well into my college years, I think. But, when I got into it a little bit, and then a friend of mine, he was really into it. So he showed me like Akira. I think that was a movie, Monster City, and a lot of those classic titles from back in the day. But as far as earliest cartoons I can remember, you're talking stuff like Felix the Cat, Who's the Ghost, Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Oh, God, that's a classic.
The Flintstones. I mean, a lot of those old ones that were like in black and white. I mean, as far as like earliest memories. And then, of course, you had, obviously the Looney Tunes. You had, the Warner Brothers serials and whatnot. So really it kind of started in there, and then it just kind of grew from there. But as far as earliest, I would probably have to say those. Also the early Superman serials was also I remember a lot from my childhood, but really it really exploded, I guess, once I started getting into like the Saturday morning stuff. So ABC had one, I think NBC had one, CBS had one, and so just on any given Saturday, just watching one of those and a lot of the features that were associated with that. So I think I probably started in there.
Oh, are you talking about the Fleischer Superman, the Fleischer ones that were done?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it was definitely early. And I'm not talking about the live action with George Reeves. I'm not talking about those.
Yeah, because you had the Fleischer stuff, and like what I remember from a kid was like you had the DC Super Friends hour, and it was it was like the Justice League together. But the Superman serial ones, that was the Fleischer ones, man. Those were classics.
Right. Now I'm not that old. I just remember
they must have replayed them. Yeah.
One of the Supermans I remember, again, I was watching reruns in Greece, and I had it on VHS here in the States. I can't remember which series it is. Like, I remember the one episode I used to watch over and over. it was this big flying robots were flying in, and they were stealing the banks, and behind them they were filling areas in the end. Lois jumps in there, and they fly away. Then Superman goes, saves them. Lois does Lois always, and get herself in trouble somehow, some way. Superman goes, saves the day. The whole basic stuff. But I remember the cartoon. The colors were very flat. I remember that much. Very flat. Right. But it was still a good storyline. I'm like, wow. And I have to look back and remember, like, wow, this is actually pretty goddamn good overall. Yeah. Even the old, what was it called? The Mickey Mouse stuff, if you remember. The black and white Mickey Mouse. They were not bad. It was he was sailing the boat and whistling.
Steamboat
and going
Willie.
down. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, and fun fact, actually I found this out on CQ's channel the other day when he was broadcasting. That just the copyright that just lapsed, so anybody can use it.
Right, it just ended. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 90 years old, something like that. You have to copyright. I'm not sure.
Copyright is 75 years, but until it goes into public domain. But it seems like it's longer than 75 years. But I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, that's where I need CQ on this. Damn
yeah, that was the first. That was actually the first animated cartoon that had the sound printed on the actual negative.
Really?
It was the first one to ever do that. It wasn't the first cartoon. A lot of people think it's the first cartoon.
1928, 1938, something like that. It was.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely in the 20s. Late 29 maybe.
Right. But
you were mentioning Felix the Cat. And I grew up with Felix the Cat, too. I still know that stupid theme song. I mean, they did a great job with that. Yeah. And I saw online, like, I don't know, a week or two ago, Felix the Cat actually was around in 1914, and it's wildly animated reoccurring character was Felix the Cat. I did not know this. And the version of the Felix the Cat that I saw, he was really...
Right.
I guess they probably came back out in the 60s or something like that. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, well, I think all those older characters, like I remember watching, like the Woody Woodpecker show.
Yeah.
Remember like the early ones where he looked very different from
how
he eventually showed up. So I think a lot of those characters underwent drastic changes. The old Tom and Jerry's, that was another one I remember from early on. If you remember the early ones. But they went through like different iterations. I remember actually my favorite one was actually the ones by I think it was Sam Jones.
Chuck Jones.
The Chuck Jones versions of them is probably my favorite.
Chuck
of the line. Yeah.
Chuck Jones, his work on Looney Tunes, I thought was it's some of the funniest storylines. You're getting away from kind of the World War II era. And it's kind of that next step, but it's still good quality before they kind of abandon the idea of high quality animation.
That's right.
Yeah. It goes back to like, what do you consider good animation? Because I think it's kind of preference too, a little bit what you're into. I'm more into the action stuff, like the beating them up stuff, like the Ninja Turtles, the Thundercats, the G.I. Joe, all those stuff. So before we get into it, Paul, did you get a chance to catch the video I played in the beginning?
No, I didn't. I didn't get a chance.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to play really fast so Kelly can be up to speed. Okay. And this is my little Frankenstein, I call it. So I put it together. It's a couple of the old animes and cartoons I used to watch. So if you're ready, here we go.
Water! Heart! Go play!
Your powers combined.
Tally ho!
I am Captain.
Yep.
Filmation, definitely. That was it.
And the Masters of the Universe.
I felt like
different company's name now.
G.I. Joe.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power.
At the end of the 21st century, the Earth was invaded by a horde of mutant spider crabs under the control of a venomoid warlord, Darkhawk.
G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe.
Got the comic or whatnot, and I just didn't good because I mean a lot of the fight sequences in there were pretty good. I mean, they definitely put a lot into making them believable.
That was
Believe it
my
or not-
that was my experience too, Paul. I didn't know anything about the turtles, and I actually watched that movie on video cassette on my honeymoon. Now, don't judge me.
Wow.
We were staying in a hotel, waiting for a ferry to take us over to Mackinac Island
Mhm.
in Michigan, and so we were there the night before. Had nothing to do. We're in this small little. There was no. I don't think there was a bar. I don't think there was a restaurant. Where there was a
Right.
hotel and a gas station next door that rented videos, and I got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like
Right.
I was like, wow, that
Yeah.
was pretty good.
Yeah.
So the cartoon came in 1987, so they was out for 3 years before the movie came out. So I was born in
And I
'85.
also remember there was also the video game. I don't know if you guys remember the arcade game,
I do.
the Ninja Turtles. So that was out also. So I was like I said, I was definitely still in college at the time, and then, again in our student center they had one, and everybody would play that. So I kind of got into it a little bit. But when the movie came out, that's what it was almost like a it was like a cult film. I mean, just people just really kind of got into it, and I think attracted a lot of mainstream to it as well.
So a question to Stacy. She said, "What about She-Ra?" She-Ra is actually a spin-off of He-Man, and that was his lost sister got kidnapped into a different dimension, and that's where that came out. And again, it was even She-Ra was a great thing. What I was going to say originally, the Turtles. I was born in '85. It was out at '87, '90. The hype of that movie, I don't think anything can beat the hype of that Ninja Turtles, even to this day. Cartoon wise, now anime wise, Pokemon.
Yes.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
Go.
By that time, I gotta admit, by that time, when I was in college, I was kind of out. I mean, I think a lot of my cartoon watching, like on a regular, like actually coming home to watch something, probably ended like in the mid '80s. So it was almost like by tradition. You came home, it was Transformers at like 3, and then G.I. Joe at 4, and I think it was Voltron at 4:30. That was almost like must-see, unless I had basketball practice or something going on afterwards or whatever. That was it. But I don't think I really got like hardcore into a like a cartoon that I had to actually tune in and watch. I mean, so something might be on, it might be in the background. I remember Pokemon when it came out, but I didn't become like a fan of it. I wasn't, or I was kind of OG, so I would go back and watch some of the animated stuff. Batman the animated series.
That's a good one too.
One that I kind of got into a little bit, and that whole genre of the I think they came out with the Superman series and whatnot. And also the X-Men. When the X-Men came out, I think that was like 90, 91, 92 when the X-Men came out on Fox. But outside of that, I mean, my cartoon watching really sort of tailed off at point in time. So by the time you got into a lot of the genres that you're talking about, grooming, I might have been out by that time. So
So
Yeah, I
here-
have some experience with the Pokemon, but only
Go for
through my kids were huge
Yeah.
into the Pokemon. That was the
Right.
perfect time for them. So like I know it. I know a lot of the characters
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. I've seen a lot of it, but
so
it's not
with Pokemon, I had a love-hate relationship. I'll explain why. And I think I mentioned to you on our show on the Great Line this. When I first moved to the country, I was addicted to Pokemon. Pokemon this, Pokemon that. I'm like, whatever. I was addicted to Techno Man still, because that's what I left off from Greece to here, and that show was already ended at the time. It was like already a memory.
Right.
So
Now, Peter. Now, are most of the cartoons in Greece? Are they in Greek? Or are they in English? Or
they're subbed.
subtitled
Yeah,
or something?
they're subbed into Greek. They're not subtitled. No, that's
Okay.
dubbed, right? Kelly, help me out here. Dubbed is right.
They're dubbed.
Dubbed. Thank you. They're
Yeah.
dubbed, and it's weird watching it sometimes. In like they're talking. Yeah. I mean, like the mouth and the words don't goddamn match at all.
Right.
That's why even Americans sometimes, like Dragon Ball, you watch them, what they're saying in the English doesn't match up. When they redid Dragon Ball Z to Dragon Ball Z Kai, and around this really happened. I saw it mostly around the Cell Saga, and their mouth is moving, but the words are not matching up. I'm like,
Right.
what the fuck
But
is this shit?
they've done, even going back to like Speed Racer. I remember
Good
that
example.
growing up and whatnot.
Speed
A lot.
Racer.
Again, that's another kind of anime show that I just didn't know was anime. I just know it was just Speed Racer.
Right.
But especially in the American stuff, they changed a lot in terms of plots. They changed names. They change. I mean, it's almost like they Americanized it, so to speak. So you're not getting the cut. So, question for you, Peter, is like, you've had the opportunity to see both the English and the Greek versions of those. And from your experience, did you prefer one over the other? Was one you thought more accurate or had a better storyline? Because the American stuff, I mean, especially, the criticisms for a lot of the Japanese imports, especially, is like they dumb them down, so to speak. For
Okay,
American audience. So they take a lot of the violence out of it, or they take, so a lot of the finished product is not even half of what the original anime was or whatever. So, but from your perspective, looking at some of these cartoons in both languages, do you have a preference, or do you think one was better than the other?
So I would say Greek was a lot better, and I'll explain why. The Greek one was, to me, personal better. It was not, let's take this out, take this out. It was like you said, Americanized. It was not like that. I'll give you a good one.
Sure.
Digimon. Digimon, if you don't know, is like a knockoff version of Pokemon. People call it Digital Monsters. It stands for. So they were seeing them running around in the man's bathtubs thing. Naked. They're like, you don't see anything. You see only the butt cracks. Nothing crazy. They're boys. Like in their probably 10, 11, they're running young boys. So they're just showering. Boys here, girls here. You don't see too much.
Right.
That they removed it, or they added like a boxer or something in American. Give you another good example. Another one was Gundam. It was a scene he's falling down and he has blood from his whole hand because Gundam is based off a war.
Yeah.
They took that out completely in America. I remember watching that back in Greece. Yeah. Oh, okay. The only way you can watch it here, it was two ways. Stay at the midnight show and watch it then. That was a little more unrated. Or get it unrated, I believe. Help me out, Kelly. Because I know this is your expertise. Unrated VHS?
Yeah, I mean, you would have had it on VHS. There was also available there I know it was available on Laserdisc there for a while too. So it probably was on tape and everything else.
I don't ever remember it on Laserdisc. I do remember on VHS. I do remember it on Blu-ray and DVD. I don't ever remember it on VHS. But again, it was more like even the theme songs. Digimon had the Digital Monsters, dun dun dun. But in the original, the Japanese and Greek one was actually word to word to the same one. Nothing ever changed it. It was like, okay, I like that. I like that actually. But when I came here, it was like, that's one thing about cartoons I didn't ever understood here. Why do they dumb it down? I never understood that. It was nothing too bad. A guy has little bloody hands.
Yeah, America, we're a little bipolar over here. So I mean,
a little bit.
You have like a conservative, kind of will allow, and then you'll have, and then you got people who, go for the extreme. But yeah, I mean, especially FCC or just different groups or whatnot. That's always been an issue here. So it's and I can't imagine, like, even today. I think things are even more PC today. So a lot of the stuff, I think I told you on a previous show. I mean, when I used to watch like Speed Racer, like I didn't pay attention until older how violent it was. Like you would have guys getting like shot up, like machine gun fire, just taking out groups and armies of enemies and things of that nature. It's like, well, as a kid, you're just into it. But yeah, but there was just a lot of violence. There was just a lot of which just goes to show also. It's like, people say, oh well, these violent cartoons lead to violence or whatever, but it doesn't seem to hurt these other societies. So I don't know how that ties together, but yeah, you definitely had a much more puritanical type of sanitized environment here.
I think that
can be fleshed out.
I think that that's a lot has to do with the culture too, because a lot of times you think about cartoons here, and it's for kids, and I think that overseas they've kind of gotten over that. It's art form. It's they're telling stories for adults using animation, and you over here, yes, they bring it over, they import it, but then immediately, oh, this is for kids. We have to find a place for it. Where do we have animation? Adults here. I mean, even now today, I mean, it's a lot more acceptable. But you get adults talking about still watching animated stuff, and if it's not anime, then it's like, you're a little sophomore, you're a little childish or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the cultural aspect of that is probably pretty big too. Once it got over here, of course they were going to clean it up. I mean, that's for regular TV shows and movies and those kind of things as well, I'm sure.
Right. But
So-
that said, something like
Go ahead, Paul.
like the Flintstones or the Jetsons, for example, I mean, they kind of mirrored the live action stuff. Like the Flintstones was essentially like I Love Lucy or the Honeymooners. Well,
Honeymooners,
the
yeah.
Honeymooners definitely.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah,
I'll give you
But
that.
in
I never thought of
animated
that.
form. It wasn't,
Yeah.
but there wasn't a lot of difference between, okay, it was silly. I mean, yeah, you had a talking dinosaur and stuff like that. Yeah, granted. But as far as the storylines and the plot lines and the stuff, I mean, the fact that, Fred and Wilma had pebbles, basically. I mean, so they brought, somewhat adult topics into the cartoons. But they were not that much different than the live action stuff with, like I said, the Honeymooners, for example.
And that was really the first attempt to try to normalize and make adult cartoons, because that was the first primetime cartoon put on television was
That's
the
right,
Flintstones.
Yeah.
Now, with one of my first questions is going to be, guys, what is you guys believe is the first earliest development in cartoons, in your opinion? Of course, we're not going after facts. We're just three guys bullshitting, trying to figure who's right, who's wrong, without any fighting, fairness. But seriously, like, Kelly, you go first, because I know you're more a geek than Paul is.
Yeah, I'm a little geek about this stuff because it's, for me, I'm big into film, right? So this all kind of mirrors into it. So when you talk about cartoons versus animation, and animation is just, that is animating something that is not alive, right? So it's a picture drawn over and over. Stop motion is animation, right? It's just a different form of animation. So when you really go back to that, you're talking about the 1800s. You're talking about when they created pictures with mirrors and you spun it. Actually, I think one of the first things that they ever did was somebody took a piece of string and had a picture of a bird and then a cage and then spun it. And because it was going so fast, it made it look like the bird was inside the cage. That was one of the first examples. But the first animated film that they ever did was done on a negative. A guy did it. I can't remember the name. Transmorgia or something like that. And it's it has a lot of the hallmarks of what we know of like the old animation, the wiry framed figures and arms and legs. And that was really the first animated feature. Now, when you start to really talk about cartoons, then I think it's all personal preference. Like for me, it's the sweet spots. Looney Tunes, that's what I grew up on. I think when you were talking about, what do you call quality animation? I call animation that doesn't jump. Like a lot of the action stuff. I like the Batman. I'm a huge Batman fan, but animation had a lot. For me, had a lot. It needed more, right? But they're putting it out on a budget. You're not getting as many frames per second, that kind of thing. So it all comes into they had to have really great stories because the animation wasn't all that great, in my opinion. But a lot of people love the action stuff. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, go ahead.
As far as quality animation, that's hard to answer because for me, it was about, especially when I was a kid, I wasn't as critical back then as I say if I may look at something now. Like, believe it or not, one of my favorite shows on that was, I wouldn't even say terribly animated. It was barely animated. Remember the Marvel superheroes from 1964? Yeah, Hulk, Submariner, Captain America. When Captain America throws his mighty. They literally ripped the pages out of the comic books and put them on. And if they animated anything, it was like the mouths or whatever, like like there was some speech or something. So it was horrible animation. I mean, for as
good stories,
but the stories were dope. So again, I look at those still with fondness. In fact, they're very hard to get, believe it or not. I mean, I would have thought that with the whole MCU thing or whatever, like they make that whole thing available. They're not the easiest to get as far as those, but I remember them with fondness. So for me, it wasn't so much about the animation per se, but it was more about what you felt or the emotions that they invoked. If it made you laugh, if it made, so again, the Looney Tunes stuff or what have you, if it invoked something in you, that was really important to me as a kid. I became much more discerning again as I became like an adult. When I saw, like, even like I said, my favorite cartoon of all time is the Transformers. So like season 1 and season 2 of Transformers is as good as it gets as far as, again, the times. But again, I can look at it today and I said, yeah, the animation wasn't the greatest for that time. But again, as you just said, the storylines, it was just very entertaining at the time. So really, I'm probably one of the worst people to ask in terms of quality of animation per se. It was either funny or it's not. The voices of the characters, made you laugh. And like I said, if you look at those earlier versions of characters like Bugs Bunny, like Woody Woodpecker, like a lot of,
so different.
So many transformations and iterations over the years, depending on who the artist was or just the direction. Because it wasn't even the characters, it was how they were. Like Woody Woodpecker early on was kind of almost like a bad guy. I mean, he was like really mischievous. Yeah. They made him super friendly in later years where he was clearly the good guy that everyone else was trying to get him, but he was not a nice character on the outset. So the fact that they would even change these characters depending on the Tom and Jerry's the same thing. Remember, they were like looking to kill each other early on. But then by the 70s, I think when ABC took it over, they were best buds. They were living together. It's like they're roommates and stuff. It was like
the same thing with Bugs Bunny. Some of those early Bugs Bunny, he's quite the wascally wabbit. I mean, he's a bit of a jerk.
Exactly.
So
the changes with these
their involvement,
you kind of have to take on the side.
The evolution of cartoons have changed it dramatically, right, Paul?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
To Kelly's point before, their first ever Publix cartoon was 1908 by the company called Phantasmagorie. I think that's fucking French, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the name of the film. Yeah, that was the film.
Yeah, it was it's a couple pictures.
Phantasmagorie. I can't.
My friend's not that good. You ask me in Greek, I can tell you anything you want. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to this,
my English isn't that good.
Like at one of those World's Fairs or something like that. I would imagine.
It shows two pictures. The one picture is showing a elephant with a kid laying on his trunk, and again, in a second picture shows the elephant again, him walking up and down the trunk. I'm like, okay, back then it could work.
Is that black?
my
it's like
memories.
white outline on black. 'Cause it was a
Exactly.
negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my memory of the best cartoon is not from the 90s. You think I was going to say 90s. You're wrong if you think that. 80s. Well, I'm going to tell you why I say 80s. Now as an adult, I go back and watch some of the old stuff from the 80s. The Thundercats, Silverhawk, Saber Riders. I can go on and on for hours. G.I. Joe, Transformers. They had a message after every show. G.I. Joe, don't do drugs. A real American hero. Example, help a friend.
Now we know, and knowing is half the battle.
Bingo, thank you. You see where I'm going with this already? So you're saying to me, like, you could watch cartoons and learn a lesson? What? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Now, did they do that did they do that in Greece also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The only difference was in Greek. Like, obviously, you seen the guy. Who was it? One of the guys who I can't remember. All the G.I. Joe guys. He's saying staying away from pools. Like, but we don't have pools in Greece, so something like it didn't really add up. But most of it, you make sense. Okay, we understand. It's thunder, stay out of the water, kind of thing. We got that part. Right, so that is where I think there was the epic era of cartoons. He-Man came out in the 80s. Thundercats. Tiger Sharks. I don't know if you remember that.
No. Like I said, you're talking high school when a lot of the shows that you're talking about. So, like I said, by the time I was like 15, 16, like in that era, like I said, a lot of my cartoon watching started to fall off. So I'll probably go as far as, like I said, Thundercats, Silverhawks, because I would watch that in the morning. Silverhawks definitely in the morning before I went to school. It would come on, so that'd be like the last thing I did before I
So here's the second question, because you say that now. So the question I have next is, how did political views change the history or events such as a war or a moment through cartoons?
Well, I mean, in World War II, Bugs Bunny was used as a spokesman for the
there were a lot
Department of Defense. So there was a lot of jokes, a lot of and some of the stuff that you can't see now. There was there's famously some very ethnic stereotype cartoons that came out. I know, especially about the Japanese. There was one in particular.
You can say some of them were racist.
Oh yeah. Well, you can say was it racism or is it an ethnic stereotype, right? It depends on where you fall on that particular. It was he was the foil. The Japanese soldier was the foil, just like it would have been Yosemite Sam or Foghorn Leghorn against the little chicken or whatever. But I think certainly, to Paul's point earlier, as cartoons became messages, like you said, Pete, that's where you start to get a lot more of the political stuff starts to rear its head, right? Because, you're giving messages, but what message are you giving? And who's deciding what the message is? You had Captain Planet. Captain Planet was all about, saving the planet, environment, eco, right? Yeah. And so you had that side pushing that agenda, and then others railing against it. So I think personally I think it was interesting that it was kind of a tool in the 40s. It's been prevalent throughout cartoons in the 70s, 80s, and certainly the 80s and 90s and beyond. And then it seemed to have gone away for a little bit, but now it's come back with a vengeance with a lot of the Disney stuff that you got going out there.
Well, I think the difference now is I think they put a lot more into the storyline to promote certain messages or lifestyles or differences or whatnot. It's like a character, like they'll introduce a character of a certain type to talk about that particular issue, whereas before it was just a talking point. I mean, for me, again, that stuff started in the 70s, especially those Saturday morning cartoons, even the live action stuff. Like, remember, like Captain Marvel or Mighty Isis or something like that.
Oh, Isis, yeah.
where they had to come in and do their service announcement about, Johnny learned a very powerful lesson today about not,
That's right.
what not to say and stuff. And then they
I
fly
forgot all
off.
about that until you mentioned it. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff was definitely, it was meant to push, a certain message or whatnot. But again, I didn't mind because a lot of the stuff was, character stuff. I mean, I don't think back then a lot of stuff wasn't, meant to be, who could argue with a lot of the points as far as, treating people fairly or
Right.
or whatnot. And I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, back in the day, they used to do actual cartoon segments outside of the cartoons that we're talking about. There was a series that came on local TV, like I'm in New Jersey, so it was like WPIX. They used to have these series called The Most Important Person, and these were like animated shorts that dealt with certain issues or whatnot, but they were meant to teach kids about something about trying and overcoming stuff or overlooking differences and things. So it was like little ways that they tried to plug in addition to, again, a lot of live action stuff. Like PBS was really big on that. Like a lot of the shows from Zoom or Contact or what was Insight. I think it was like another, like all these PBS shows that came on that dealt with, again, a lot of youth issues, social pressure, bullying, whatever. I just think in the time, I think TV, especially in the 70s, because that's my favorite reference, but in the 70s, TV, someone figured out that TV is a tool to to present a message. To we're talking about like social engineering to an extent, where you had the audience. So definitely with the PBS stuff, they did it through animated as well as live action skits. And because we used to watch that stuff in school, like it would literally be a segment of the school day where they would
I remember
have that show on because it came on, like Electric Company or one of those shows would come on like at 2 p.m. So we would just everyone would just gather around the TV. They'd roll the TV out, and we would watch certain shows or subjects, and that'd be a talking point. So we TV would teacher would turn it off, and we'd be like, okay, well, what did we learn from that, or use it as a teaching lesson and tool. So a lot of that, the PBS networks were certainly into it, and even in the cartoons that we watch, like the Saturday mornings or the afternoon shows, very much about social engineering and also about, again, presenting a certain character that whoever the powers that be, it could have been family groups, it could have been the government, or whatever, what they wanted people to, or what they wanted kids to get out of these things besides just the entertainment value of it.
Yeah, one of the more for me, one of the most successful things that they did was during my time period, you had the animated sequences where they talk about like conjunction junction.
Oh yeah,
And
the Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah,
Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, a little tidbit about that. Person who wrote the music for Schoolhouse Rock, he wrote all the songs. Same guy.
Yeah.
And he lived in Allentown.
Really?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Can't remember his name, but yeah.
So
like to this day, like when I you think about the Constitution, I'm like, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. I have all these songs in my head that that's helped me.
Right.
So side note for everybody out there. Go ahead, Bo. Finish your sentence. I want to say a couple things.
The sad thing about it is that is probably for a time the only. I know, in school we might have had social studies or whatever, but that's the only stuff that stuck.
Right.
You know what I
Give
mean?
it to us in rhythm with some music.
U.S. history and all that stuff was okay or whatever.
I'm just a bill.
But a lot of kids cannot pass today, coming out of high school, a citizenship test.
Oh.
But a lot of stuff that would have been on the citizenship test was probably in the Schoolhouse Rock videos. How does a bill move through? I'm just a bill. I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting on Capitol Hill. So
I remember.
That's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, that was the only way kids got it. But it's unfortunate because by the time you need it, when you're 18, when you're going to vote for the first time, you either forgot most of it. That's why I really think social studies, just as a, this is my little peeve or whatever. I think social studies in general should take place later in your college career. In other words, to prepare you for high school career, to prepare you for voting. If you choose to vote, by the time you're 17, 18, a lot of that stuff should be good. And I wouldn't even mind if you had to pass an exam. Like if high school kids needed to pass a citizenship test, the same test that immigrants have to pass to become citizens, you get your degree when you pass the citizenship test, but make the classes available in your junior or senior year when most of your main academics are over, so that again you're more informed and it's more useful. But if I'm learning, I'm just a bill at 9 years old, then
You're not
what
gonna remember it
benefit
back
is that
then.
going to do? Because I can't vote, I can't do anything with that. It's just a cool song or it rhymes or whatever, but I can't do anything with that. So that's always
I
been.
still remember what a conjunction is. I'm just saying, conjunction, junction. What's your function?
Yeah, it's
Hooking
Okay,
up
so a couple
phrase
questions here
Susan.
for you guys. Because Paul, I know you have kids, and they recently just went to college, right?
Yeah, my last one, she's in her junior year.
Yeah. Do they still do the song, or is it taken out?
Do they still do what?
The song, the junkin, whatever it's called.
Oh no, those are old. I mean, old. They may have different video, videos or.
They were like
streaming
5-minute clips that they had between cartoons.
Because I don't remember that part.
When my kids were younger, though, we a lot of that stuff was on VHS at the time, VHS or DVD. So I bought a lot of the Schoolhouse Rock segments or whatever. Or again, PBS was still strong at that time. So again, they watched Sesame Street. Elmo was big with those guys growing up. So a lot of the Elmo Palooza shows and content did a lot of teaching stuff or whatever with the words and whatnot. So so we had fun with that. So it was somewhat similar, but back in the 70s, a lot of that stuff was available, like I said, in free TV. Like I said, especially Saturday mornings, you would see probably 2 or 3 Schoolhouse Rocks on any given Saturday morning.
Yeah, for sure.
Back in the day when they talked about this.
Now, see, my next question is to you, Kelly, because you might know more of that because you're my working blockbuster encyclopedia. Now those messages they usually play in the cartoons, was that ordered by the government, maybe like or was it like kind of like was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of these. There used to be it actually used to come up, and I'm trying to remember. Parents for Children. It was like a group who sponsored it, and it eventually became, part of the programming. It was almost like they were like, listen, they're catching flack for having all these cartoons. Well, we want to teach them something. It was kind of their way of saying, hey, we're gonna teach them. We're gonna. It's not gonna be all just bubble gum. There's gonna be a little bit of carrots in this, and this is how we're gonna do it. I'm trying to remember what the name of that group was, but it was like a parents group that got the whole thing started.
Right. Yeah, probably. But I think it was a bit of a collab because you also, I think, the Department of Education, like I said, especially for the PBS stuff, because I think PBS was basically government funded.
Well, that's public broadcasting, yeah.
So they were definitely involved. The Department of Education was definitely involved in a lot of those
grants and everything else that they were getting from the government.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they were definitely involved. So I think it was a collab, but I think people start to understand that TV could be used as an educational tool, especially as more kids. I don't know if they stayed in more or and again, you also have to understand we take for granted television being so ubiquitous, but in the 50s it was a luxury to have a TV. I mean, it wasn't like Peter, you just got an 85-inch set, but having any television in the 50s, let alone a color television, you were really up there if you had a color TV. Didn't hit critical mass until like the mid 60s or something like that. I mean,
no, it was later than that. When I was in 78, I was living with my mother in Texas, and we had, in fact, it was the year that Battlestar Galactica came out.
Yeah.
And because we had a black and white TV, and when we finally got a TV, I was so shocked that the Cylons were silver, because in my head, looking in black and white, they just seemed like they were gold. Right. And so I remember so between 78 and 79, we got our first color television set.
Right. I'm saying TVs in general. Like even in the 50s, owning a TV
Oh
wasn't
yeah, sure.
like dominant. But by the 60s or maybe the early 70s, color TV started to take off. Because I remember, through the well into the mid 70s,
Yeah.
I still had a black and white TV as well.
Sure.
So again, probably around your time, around 78, before I actually saw like colorized programming on a regular basis, Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days and all that kind of stuff. So, it was
and everything we watched was all reruns. All those cartoons it was put someplace else first. It got different, in the 80s and 90s. You started to have original programming on those Saturdays and stuff, but all of that stuff was just retreads. There in the 50s, there was no such thing as a rerun.
See, here's one cartoon you guys may not remember. It might be past your time. It was called Action Man. Action Man was aired originally in 1995. So this is an interesting cartoon for me because in Greece it was the hype. Oh my god! If you didn't talk about Action Man, you were nobody. That's how popular. And their action figures, it wasn't like a little doll like this small. It was like this goddamn fucking big. So the thing I like about Action Man to this day, first of all, I'll tell you the acting was horrible at the beginning because you had real actors acting as Action Man. First 10, 15 minutes, it was live action. Then it went into the anime. That was actually pretty decent, right? Now, in the end, Action Man comes back out and he goes, and he always stand like this, tight shirt, blue shirt, had the M, the Action Man, like with Miami. He goes, so guys, whatever he was doing, he would always stand like this. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, you get tired of standing like that every single time. But what I liked about it was like, a little both worlds. He started with a mission, react, then he goes into the cartoon, then comes back and gives you the message of the day. Well, Dr. X did so and so and so. I'm like, oh, okay. And I found it very fascinating how they used to do it like that. But now, like SpongeBob, there's nothing there. Some stupid sponge in the sea. Yeah. I hate that cartoon.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I like SpongeBob
in general.
Oh, shut up,
I don't watch a lot, but I think they're just. It's like fart jokes. You know what I mean? It's like my girls. They were into like Phineas and Ferb. That was a big one, but it was just about obnoxiousness. There was no, morality. Almost was like kind of out the window. It was just about kids just doing ridiculous of what they could get away with. The parents are like oblivious to what's going on because they're in their own world or whatever, and they're doing all this stuff or whatever, and just getting home as if nothing happened. But it's about kids just being obnoxious half the time. So yeah, I think there's definitely a difference in what's being provided today, but it's certainly not that like the story of something. And also going back to you talking about my early childhood stuff, probably some of the early stuff I remember is the Charlie Brown stuff. So you had Charlie Brown Christmas, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, Halloween might be it's Halloween Charlie, but that's still probably my favorite one.
Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Great Pumpkin. Yeah, exactly. So those were very impactful.
And messages, and well done, and funny, and animated. All the stuff.
Talk about just from a Christian perspective. I'm to this day. Show me anything that matched Linus getting up there and breaking down what Christmas is all about. Like if you're religious or not, he just went up there, broke it down, dropped the mic, got off the stage, and I still haven't seen anything better than that. I'm like, deuces, you know what I mean? That was it. So yeah, they were very much, the quality. To your earlier question, Peter, about the quality of a lot of that animation back then, that was it back then.
So the next question, I think we already talked about it, and I think I don't know. We were talking about the evolution of cartoons. Let's skip that one. We already kind of went on that rant already. So, how would you think the sound changed over the years, the cartoons?
Well, sophistication. You go from budgeted. You've got one guy doing all the voices of all the Looney Tunes in a cartoon, Mel Blanc, to now it's so segmented, and you've got the unions, and so from a voice actor standpoint, yes, you have a lot of people who do a lot of different voices, but there's so many more. I think there's so much more versatility and diversity in voices that you hear now.
Yeah.
I think it's also become very, very sophisticated as audiences have become more sophisticated with movies and television. They've also become more discerning in sound design, and so they really pick it apart. So I think what they're doing in some of the stuff now, especially you get an action anime, is pretty awesome. How many times when we were growing up we watched it, I don't care what it was, whatever action, you heard the same explosion over and over again. It was royalty free. They
especially the Hanna
Hanna-Barbera.
I have actually,
Same stuff.
as a nerd point, I actually had on CD the Hanna and Barbera sound effects.
I knew you were gonna say that. So
I got it. I don't know where I was when I got it. I was at some music store or whatever, and because I'm also a big here's my geek stuff. I was big into TV show themes and intros and stuff. Johnny Quest.
Oh
Oh my God.
Gilligan's Island or whatever. So I remember in the 80s they came out with this TV's greatest themes, and I got all.
I remember that.
I got all 3 chapters of it. And then, like I said, I got the Hanna-Barbera sound catalog. So, right. So, a lot of those seem, in fact, you could know what the series was based on the sound effect. I think each company had their own catalog of stuff.
Yeah.
So definitely the Hanna-Barbera stuff, and I'm sure there were others. But yeah, so you're right.
It's the same. It's the same explosion in every episode. It's the same sound over and over.
Yeah.
And you know what? Full disclosure, I do own the Star Trek sound effects myself from the original series. So I
Okay.
I bow to
Okay.
your geekness.
Okay. I have some of the sound. I have some of the sound because again, Star Trek they also used a lot of the same music, like Amok Time. When Kirk and Spock are fighting with that dun 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 dun. So I got all that also.
Yeah.
Somewhere, but yes, I mean you're right. The studios would definitely sample that stuff through, but again, I'm a kid. Like I said, I didn't care, about originality. But what I will say now, Pete, when you talk about sound, are you talking about just the voice, or are you talking about the music also?
They're both actually.
Okay, now that I would say it might have went down a little because keep in mind, I talked about earlier how especially the Schoolhouse Rocks educated you on social studies. Unless you took in school classical music, you got your education in classical music, especially with the Looney Tunes stuff, because all that stuff was like Bach and
Merry melodies.
Dun 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 dun. So that was like, and the thing is, you didn't know what that was. In fact, I had gotten another CD, and I think the name of it's called "You May Have Heard This From," whatever. And so it would be like, the song itself is the composer and it's the symphony, it's the 8th century, blah, blah, blah. But you probably heard this in Looney Tunes or something. It's like, oh, so now I know what the song is. I've been hearing it all my life. You couldn't, if it was like, remember that game show, Name That Tune, that used to be on? If you told me, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the song was. I just remember, oh, yeah, that's from the Bugs Bunny cartoons or something. Now I can, with some sophistication now, give you the composer and the symphony and all that kind of stuff going on. But I mean, certainly those dominated the early cartoons, all those classical scores. Now they just kind of went back to, maybe in the 70s, 80s, they did synthesizer stuff. And then later on, they might have got some composers to do some things or whatever. But back then, symphony, orchestration was huge in a lot of those early cartoons, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great point, Paul.
So I'm similar to you, Paul. I'll tell you why. When I was younger, I used to buy all the favorite movies, anime, whatever. If there's a soundtrack out there, I am buying it. I had over 50 soundtracks. My friends used to call me soundtrack boy. That's how bad it was. So,
Same way.
Yeah. Voice, they went up, I think, because they have more actors now, and some of these actors make shit, they make some real good goddamn fucking money, more than the actual real actors.
It makes some bank.
Yeah, and it depends who you are. Well, let's say you're not living a bad life. Actually, you don't have to work out too much because you're doing voices.
Yeah, the nice thing about it, you can walk around in public and nobody has to worry about.
And that's what I was gonna go next. That's except if you're a geek and like us, like you tell me who drive, like say X, Y, and Z, I may know the voice. Like I know who Optimus Prime. If I see the guy Optimus Prime walk down the street, oh, that's Optimus Prime. I know who he is. The music, opening themes. That's the one I want to touch base now. I think they suck now these days. It isn't a cartoon that I could not. A song was stuck in your head. Thundercats, Thunder, Thunder, Thundercats, or G.I. Joe, or Great American Hero. I apologize to whoever's listening to my voice. I'm not a singer. I'm an ex-chef in trade. So,
not a singer.
Yeah. Side note, me and Kelly work together. He knows I can put it down in the kitchen really well. But don't ask me to sing because I'm probably going to crack your eardrums really bad. So, Era. There you go. You got your warning now. But there were some really good theme songs, like the Zero Monsters, dun dun dun. It was a good beat, and you're like, you keep hitting it. You want to shake your head to it. I'm not saying you want to get up and dance, but like you want to listen to it. You want to go back watch the show again. I want to hear that thing like it was cool. Fucking happen.
Yeah, like the Star Blazers theme. Come on,
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Our Star Blazers. Come
Yeah,
on,
or
man, that's good
Brave
stuff.
Star.
For me, it was all of them. Like always to the, like I said, we would be on the bus going to school singing these songs. That was just what we did. On the basketball team, on the way to games, we would be singing Josie and the Pussycats. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we were just like someone would just kick it off, and then someone would just break it down into the verse. So it was cartoons. It was live shows, like I said, Gilligan's Island. It was so you were like graded on stuff, and like I said, especially when I got that TV's greatest hits, and I'll be listening to that stuff all day long, and I had those tunes just down. So when we got to the it would be karaoke or something like that, or you just start busting into singing TV themes or whatever. It's like I knew this stuff like down. So the same thing with the cartoons. Here comes the racer. He's a demon on wheels. I mean, so
you got better voice than me, man.
You just knew all of those songs, man. That was what we did. We had a ton of fun with that. If you wanted to break the ice or whatever, and people just be innocent with it. TV theme songs. It definitely wasn't gangster rap, but it was definitely something that it was just fun. It was like the sing-alongs going to camp or whatever. We would do TV theme songs or something like that. It was just it was a fun time.
He's looking at like an anthem, like okay, we all know Queen, like we will rock you. Everyone knows the songs that.
Right.
If to us and whoever's watching right now, if you guys don't know a cartoon, like we probably know about. That's how dorky we are. But it was just something about that theme song that's stuck in your head. You couldn't get it out of your head. To next week, it came around. Like, okay, Friday came out. You finally got it out of your head. Now Saturday comes out like, oh shit, not again. And it's stuck in your head again. Yeah. That's how toxic. And I think they did it on purpose so you come back and watch it over and over. And let's be honest here for just a second. Cartoons were really made to do what? Kelly, you know the answer to this. I know it.
Cartoons were originally made to do what?
Yeah. Finish the sentence.
I mean, look, sell.
Sell what?
I mean, whatever it is, the message, whatever. So, you had cartoons that were originally, you had the cartoons, the serials, and that was bringing people into the movie theater. You got cartoon, like you put something on TV today, it's because you're going to sell it. Like you can go more artistic and say, but ultimately anything that you're seeing on the tube, anything you're seeing, I get you.
Okay.
I get you.
Paul, you're up next.
That's the truth.
You're going to see my answer in a minute because I already did research on this. Paul, what do you think? Which one was it?
Cartoons were originally meant to do what? Originally.
So what? And to this day, it does the same thing to this day.
I would say toys.
Bingo! That's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Toys, action figures, soft drinks, coolers.
Oh,
whatever.
Kenny's
Toys
pissed.
is a big one for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, that's what they do now. That's what I said. They're designed to sell, without a doubt.
Yes, I'm not denying
But
what you're saying.
originally, cartoons. When you think about the Looney Tunes and stuff, I mean those were small cartoons that they showed in between the different movies. You'd go to the movie theater because movies weren't 3 hours long. You'd go and see a movie that was an hour and 10.
Yeah,
you'd watch a cartoon. Yeah. You'd watch the newsreel in between because that's how you got your news because there was no evening news. There was no TV, and so you'd watch your cartoon, you'd watch your news, and then you'd watch your second feature. So it was to bring in the masses.
It wasn't really until the 60s where that really took off.
Yeah.
Like even like in
TV.
sports, like if you look at that old 50s sports shows and whatnot, they were like cigarette companies were the sponsors, or soap companies. Like they say soap operas, right? Is because they were by the soap manufacturers, Procter and Gamble and all of that. But I think it wasn't until the 60s, one, because again, when the TV had to become what's that term they use when something you hit that curve, that S curve where it hits critical mass or whatever.
Critical mass, yeah.
Right. So it wasn't until the 60s where you basically had a TV like in every home. And sports had a lot to do with that, especially with the NFL. Well, baseball was big, and then the NFL, I think, really is what launched television in the home because people wanted to watch that. But then when people saw an opportunity to market to kids, all those toy commercials. I remember the toy commercials, a lot of them, especially in the 70s and 80s, as much as I do the cartoons themselves. From the G.I. Joe action figures, the My Little Pony.
Heck, if you have all the kids watching them, you're silly not to throw the commercials there.
Yeah. So that's when the selling of the advertisements really took off. The Barbie stuff, like I don't think they did a ton of Barbie commercials in the 50s. But when the 60 team, you could plug it right in. And again, back then, a lot of the commercials were, like I said, for adult beverages, beer, cigarette commercials, or whatever. Like you're not gonna show a Viagra ad during a cartoon. You know what I mean? So, you have to, that was a perfect marriage, bringing the cartoons in with the toys, and then you had Mattel and all those early toy companies really just took off at that point. So
this is a fun fact, and I know that Kay, you maybe remember this actually. It was some commercials like they're smoking, and he goes, "Nothing tastes like a marble." I'm like,
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember seeing him on YouTube and stuff like that. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I remember the commercials. I remember the commercials where it was commercials for candy cigarettes. Where you would have the candy cigarette, and it had powdered sugar. So when you blew out the end of it, it looked like you were smoking.
Wow. Cigarette companies went that far, didn't they, back then? Shit.
Yeah, but guys used to smoke on it. Like if you watch the old sports, especially the sports and the news shows, like Walter Cronkite was smoking on air.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
He's puffing out his cigar or a cigarette or something. It's like that was before. I don't know if that's before the Surgeon General or what, but nobody.
Oh yeah. Well, and they didn't know what they know now, and also it was sophistication.
Totally.
You were sophisticated if you had a cigarette.
That's why you have your drink, you have your gin or your bourbon, you got your wine, glass of wine, your cigarette. That was high class, high society. It just baffles me to this day. Like back in the day, like 60-70% of American adults smoked back in the day. It's like you can't.
You guys forget I'm a former smoker, right?
70% of Americans smoked back then.
Yeah, I used to be a smoker. Trust me, I know. So here's the other question for you.
Now they still smoke hard in Greece, right?
Oh God, yeah. It's like
that's crazy.
Yeah, and drinking too. And like every day, you go into a cigarette shop, you'll be smoking, having your coffee with your Coboloy. You guys don't know what a Coboloy is.
Coboloid. What is that?
A Coboloy.
What is a Coboloid? What is that?
It's a stress bead thing you play with your hands.
Okay.
I'm gonna go over this on the gray line. Don't worry, Cole. I got you. This is why I bought this. But what is the golden age of animation / cartoons in your opinion?
For me, there's two.
I'm always saying I'm getting good tonight. Like shit.
40s, for me,
Really?
40s, the Looney Tunes 40s,
Okay.
and then for movie animation, it came back again in the early 90s. 89, you had Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Toy Story. When Pixar hit the scene, I think that you probably had a good 15-year run there before it kind of got saturated. But for me, those are the two eras for me. Because those 40s also then for me is my entire childhood, right? So you had it during the 40s, but it's really for me it's the 40s production that they then showed in the 70s on Saturday mornings.
40s?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm going to
kind
hang
of
on a
like
second,
how you
before you
approach
say
that.
it.
I would have to.
I just
I would have to look
when
at it
you
the same
said
way.
40s, you remember that? I didn't thought you were that goddamn old.
No, but I know who Elvis Presley is too, but I didn't listen to him when he got started either. But, those cartoons,
Okay. Anyway,
all
Paul,
those
you were saying now?
those Looney Tune cartoons were all, all came about in the late 30s, early 40s, and 50s, and then they wound up on TV.
Yeah, I would have to say I like kind of where you're going with that. I would have to say something similar because again, Disney, when you talk about Pinocchio and Bambi and all those Mickey Mouse movies, Fantasia, that really was such it, and I I think at the time it wasn't just for kids, it was like mainstream. Adults, families went and saw these films, and a lot of those early films were animated like that. So definitely 40s and 50s, Cinderella.
That's kind of that golden age.
Yeah,
And that's what I mean. And
yeah.
then you had the 70s where you had like 101 Dalmatians and Aristocats and Robin Hood, things that are nostalgic for me, but quality wise, not as good as the early stuff, and certainly not as good as the 90s.
They put a lot into that early stuff. But I would still say the 60s and 70s, again, the Saturday morning cartoon era. For me personally, like what I obviously remember and what I'm most fond of was those Saturday mornings when you had all of that. You had the afternoon cartoons. Well, you had your morning cartoons like Josie and the Pussycats or whatever. You had your afternoon cartoons. You had your Saturday morning cartoons. So that's like my childhood was just enwrapped in all of that growing up. And like I said, by the mid 80s, I was kind of off it, just doing more adult things. But I would have to say those. Now, again, to your earlier point about, a lot of that 40s and 50s stuff was the series on Saturday mornings, like all the Warner Brothers stuff, the Looney Tunes stuff, that was all back then was just shown in repeats on Saturday mornings. But then you also had like the Super Friends, right? Yeah. And all of those remember that the Filmation Tarzan, I remember on Saturday mornings. So I had all those shows, Captain Marvel,
Johnny Quest, and you got the Hanna-Barbera. What was the Hanna-Barbera hour with the 1 banana, 2 banana, 3 banana, 4? You remember that show that they had? Banana Splits.
That thing.
The Banana Splits.
Yeah. And well, that's a whole nother subject. I don't know how much you want to tackle that. The live action cartoons, for lack of a better word, like Far Out Space Nuts and the Bugaloos,
Banana Split.
So you
Sigmund the Sea Monster.
Sigmund the Sea Monster, exactly. So so all those Land of the Lost, I got to throw in there.
Land of the
Also.
Lost,
that was huge on Saturday morning. So it's live action, but it's still in that cartoony sort of fantasy space. You don't want to leave those guys out also. But I would say definitely the 40s and the 50s when that Disney had that explosion of stuff, and then you had Disney World. Well, Disneyland came out first in '55, and then Disney World in '80 or whatever. Certainly that built that the success of those built the Disney properties that people would then patronize later on, and then the '60s and '70s, like I said, with the Saturday mornings, doing what they were doing. Yeah, those are I would say those two eras. Anything past the '90s, I don't have a reference. I just don't.
Okay. To me, I would say 80s, late 90s. The reason I say 80s is because all the good shit was coming out back then, and they were in a good rhythm. But when at 95, 96, 97, they had to change because the newer kids are coming up now. They're getting out of diapers. They're starting to watch cartoons, and we're like, the hell is this shit? 2000s, maybe a handful. Now 2010s, I wouldn't even bother turning a goddamn TV. I wouldn't even get cable. That's how bad the cartoons were. When I tell my kids, you're watching DVDs, fuck that shit. Again, I may be able to crazy and old school, but I think the old school stuff is what the juice is. Because you actually learn something. I'm going back to that again. I will keep saying that.
Sure.
But let me ask this question. Do you guys think television evolutionized the 20th century cartoon?
Did television revolutionize it?
Mm-hmm.
Or evolve it?
Both.
I guess the same thing, right? Yeah. I mean, it packaged it, right? Like television, it became a package. It became we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna sell the toy, and now we're not just creating the cartoon, the time to sell toys. We're now gonna create cartoons that will be the toys, and that as soon as you take that aspect and you remove the creative need to create this, and it becomes a marketing ploy. I think that you could argue that it devolved it, but it certainly evolved what cartoons are today. And I think if it wasn't for anime, we wouldn't have much in the way of real good quality out there anymore. Anime, fortunately, has allowed the adults in the room to say, okay, this is worth it. This is quality stuff, and that trickles down. Then it's not just as people want to see quality, they'll if they want them to watch television, they're gonna have to have a certain amount of quality, but it's all packaged now.
Right.
What are you about, home?
Yeah, I think in the I would agree with most of that. I think certainly the early stuff they were movies. You know what I mean? They weren't meant to be 30-minute serials, or really 20 minutes, 10 minutes with the commercials and whatnot. So again, it's a different mindset. It's like anything else. Like if you're trying to produce a movie versus making a television show, they're very different practices. I mean, you could have Martin Scorsese. He would probably suck as a TV producer. You know what I mean? It's just not. It's a different animal, and different expectations. And what's driving it is also going to be different. So it's but again, there's great television, television writers and whatnot. As long as you put the work into the writing, and make it engaging, you can certainly make something that's a week to come back to. I just haven't seen anything, and again, I'm not especially not in the cartoon world. I'm not seeing a lot of stuff today. So again, I can't really speak to that. But I'm just thinking, even just with the movies. Now I have seen, again, I haven't watched a ton of. In fact, I can't remember the last animated film I saw. It might have been I think they came out with a Charlie Brown movie maybe like 10 years ago or something like that. It was and they just updated the animation on it, made it more like 3-dimensional or something like that. But it was still a cartoon.
See, this is my next topic, actually.
Stuff, but now you have this animated, more like the CGI type of stuff. Like ever since Toy Story came out, they're coming out with a lot more sophisticated, more 3D. In fact, actually, Spider-Man, the last Spider-Man movie that came out.
Yeah,
Now that was good.
that was a leap. That was a leap forward.
Yes, yes. So that was something that was engaging. So I think but again, that's in the movie space.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're putting that same kind of work into the anime space. The last animation that I recall that was good, that was like where they had the story and everything going, was again in the 90s with the Batman animated series, and then the movies that came from that, Mask of the Phantasm, and all that infrastructure that they built in that time. But outside of that, I don't know if they're putting the quality in. And like I said, ever since you've had this, like I said, the SpongeBob's and whatnot, a lot of it just becomes just, obscene more so than funny. And that's another thing too. I can't remember the last time I watched anything new in the cartoon space that made you laugh.
That's because they don't make it for adults anymore. They make it for, they've dumbed it down. They're making it for kids.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna cut you off a second,
we don't
Kelly.
laugh at half the things that kids laugh at anymore.
Right.
So the one cartoon that kids are obsessed with now is Blue. The only reason I know that my best friend's son, I think Logan's 5 or 6, he's obsessed with that cartoon. Like, I remember going over his house, he's on it from the time we get up to the time he goes to bed. That's one of the few cartoons that has a lesson and is actually entertainment for kids. Animation is good storyline for kids. But I remember he was doing something with his wife for a second, and I was like watching it for like 10, 20, maybe 15 minutes. I'm like, this is kind of boring, actually. For me, for adult. But now if we're talking about, here's the better question is, TV might not have it for you, but what about streaming now? Streaming evolves to everything else. What do you guys think?
Honestly, I can't speak to that because honestly, I don't spend a lot of time streaming anything. It's like if it's not on YouTube, I may go to Netflix because there's a particular movie that I want to watch. But the last series that I actually got into, that I actually binge watched, I've only binge watched one thing ever, and that was the Cobra Kai series that came out a couple years ago. Because I was a huge Karate Kid fan back in the day, and so when Cobra Kai came out, I was like, oh man! So I was watching like the whole night. I watched season 1 in one night, and then season 2 came out the next night. Where I just got myself into it, but then I was like, I can't do this anymore. Because I'm just too busy. I just got other things going on. Game of Thrones might have been the last like weekly show that I had to tune into to watch was Game of Thrones. I haven't even watched the Drogon series that's come out since then.
I will say this, just as a side,
Mm-hmm.
you should, if you like Game of Thrones, you would like the Dragon series. It's very good. It's reminiscent of earlier Game of Thrones. It's very good.
Yeah. I understand the premise. I might have watched like maybe one episode or something like that, but it's like I said, it was just hard to throw myself into that kind of devotion again. So I'm a constant, like a 10-minute YouTube clip, a 20-minute something here or there. The only thing I watch regularly is sports, like football. If it's the NFL, if it's the Steelers, I'm all in. Basketball season is like now I'm starting to get into the basketball, so I'll watch a sporting event. But outside of that, like taking the time to sit down and just binge watch a serial, like my wife and daughters do that stuff. Like I'll go out and I'll come back and they'll still watch. It's like, is that the same one? No, that's just they just went through 6 episodes and now they're on the 7th. I can't do that.
I will say that there is something that is definitely, from a quality standpoint, it's about the best thing I've ever seen animated, certainly on television. It's on Netflix. It's called Arcane, and it's based on a video game, a computer video game called League of Legends, which I never played. I'm a gamer, but I never played. I hadn't even ever heard of it. But I'd seen some clips of this Arcane and thought, let me watch this. This is an animated show that's taken them 3 years to do a season, because I'm not sure how they do the artwork, but imagine, as opposed to drawing every frame, it's a painted every frame. It is that gorgeous, and it's so incredibly detailed. Great storyline. It's kind of a steampunk world, but fantastic animation, and it's available right now on Arcane.
What's it called again?
Arcane, ARC.
AJNE.
ANE, yeah.
Okay.
So, League of
Highly
Legends,
recommend that. It's like 10 episodes.
League of Legends is actually a very good game. It's not my cup of tea, but transition from a video game to a anime is never a good way to do it. Is a good example. Devil May Cry. Animation was beautiful, great. Transition wasn't good again. Resident Evil, another one. It's I haven't seen too many of them. Like, oh shit, they did a good fucking job. So here's a good question then. Oh, as we're in it, CGI. How do you think that helped? Because I think it screwed everything up personally.
It's
artwork.
Like I said, CGI. Like I said, the last Spider-Man movie I saw, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or whatever. It was a nice blend of the CGI with the animation. It's a very sophisticated way of doing it. But as we talked about on last week's show, CGI should be meant to help tell a story, but it can't tell the story. So again, it still gets back down to writing at the end of the day and what you're trying to present. Now the CGI should help, but if it becomes distracting, if it becomes too dominant, it can ruin it. It's almost like CGI should be almost like the salt. You put
just because you can put anything on the screen doesn't mean you should put everything on the screen. That CGI should be there to put the things that are impossible in a normal world to get up there and leave it at that. And guys, I'm sorry, but that's all the time I have another engagement.
Yes. I got
my time is up.
5 minutes with you, Pete.
All right, guys.
So thank you guys. I really appreciate the time and really appreciate the conversations, guys.
Absolutely. Pleasure sharing the stage with you, for sure.
All right, guys.
See you next time.
Have a good night. I will finish out here by myself.
No, I'm good. I got another 5 minutes with you if you want to.
Oh, okay. So let me close this camera out. Okay, so we were talking about CGI. So here's my thing with CGI. There was a anime called Transformer Prime, I think was it?
Okay.
The anime was horrible. Oh my god. It was like you could
I
tell
remember
what
the Beast Wars.
That's where the next one I was going to.
Yeah.
Beast Wars wasn't that bad, I thought.
Mm.
Because that was the early of CGI. Very early. So, okay, I can cut him a little slack. But by now, motherfucker, get your shit together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what was another one? It was Beast Wars. A few years later, they came back with Beast Machines, I think it was called. And it was a spin-off.
Right.
And that needed work. You can tell, like, they went backwards. So I'm not a big fan of CGI.
Yeah, like I said, it boils down to quality. Like I said, I can go back and watch season 1 and season 2 of Transformers, and I can definitely say the animation is a bit
choppy,
old. I mean, it's not smooth. It's not very sophisticated, but the stories are such that they still pull you in. And so again, it doesn't matter how smooth the animation is or the CGI is or what have you. Again, what story are you telling? I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to be a storyteller. And you also should have an aim in terms of what you're looking for. You're looking to make people laugh, to make people think, to engage, in what emotions you want to invoke.
Mm-hmm.
That still has to be paramount to whatever you put together. You can get away with lack of quality animation, but you can't get away with poor storytelling. Like I said, go back to the most archaic animation I've ever seen was those early Marvel superhero serials from the 60s, 1964, 1966, with those. Very bad. I mean, relatively speaking. But as a kid, it didn't matter because the storytelling was so good. Because the comics were very good. Because, again, they literally pulled segments out of the comic book storyboard from the comic book and they just did little animations to it to make the lips move or to, to animate an arm or something like that, but it wasn't meant to, wow you with the animation. So again, but if the story is good, you can get away with less.
So this is where I want to touch this last topic, and we'll close out after that.
Sure
Do
thing.
you remember? And this is off my head right now. The GI Joe movie and a Transformer movie.
Transformer movie from '86, yes. The GI Joe movie, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I thought that animation and the story, everything to the T, was great. I think it holds up to this day. And that's how good I think it is. And if that's what you might argue, okay, a lot of people don't like, how Optimus Prime died or X1C. You gotta make everybody happy. Could it keep Optimus Prime? Yeah, whatever. But I'll take what I got. It's a little choppy. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. It's like you can tell, like you said, it's old, but I think it's good old. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, the animation was good. I know that they went with another company to do the animation for the film, and again, it was an anime type of company. I mean, the movie looked more like anime than the daily cartoon series that came on. Absolutely, they definitely, I thought, in many ways, increased the quality for the movie, and the characters themselves felt much more fleshed out, much more voluminous, much more real in it. I just didn't. But the main reason they went to the lengths that they did to kill Prime and everything else, it was a decision to sell toys. They basically wanted to clean them all out, and they brought in all those new characters because they wanted to sell new toy lines. That
goes back to what I was saying earlier.
They didn't think it was whether or not it was going to be a good story or not was irrelevant. They were like, look, we need to, we've saturated the market with the season 1 and series 2 action figures. We have to make room for these new ones. So we basically got to wipe everybody out so we can sell these new ones. But the thing is, that didn't work because nobody liked the new stuff. It was too alien. There was a drop off in the animation, as crude as I said it was in 84, 85. It was even cruder in series 3 in 86. So they took money out of the budget for the daily cartoon, but everything was meant to try to sell more toys, and it didn't work. So again, don't go away from what got you to where everybody was talking about. Even kids in high school were all about the Transformers. We had to get home and watch Transformers at 3:00 whenever it came on, or whatever, or GI Joe for that matter. It was the same thing. But again, the first 2 seasons of GI Joe were essentially movies that they broke up into segments that lasted the entire week. So they definitely tried to do too much from the formula again that worked. So you gotta be mindful of that when you're in terms of what you're trying to produce, what you're trying to create, and so I thought they missed opportunity. But again, Transformers, I think they're still so transparent. I mean, even the movies, you talk about the CGI, I think the movies are ridiculous now. I really haven't. I don't think they've necessarily gotten better. I mean, the one when they brought the Dinobots in, and they didn't even call them Dinobots in the film, but that might have been okay. I can get away with that one, but now it's just too much going on the screen. It's almost like you get a headache watching it. It's just too much.
So I don't want to get too much off topic with the Transformers.
Yeah.
I feel they were doing really well. They lost a couple actors, was directors and stuff like that. The second one was rushed. You can tell it was rushed because they wanted to get a movie out because pick up the second one. So when they brought Mark Wahlberg, I think they were doing a really good job the way it was direction. But after the second one, he came back. It kind of went like 360 again. Now with the Beast Wars Transformers, it was supposed to be a soft reboot, but I think they didn't do it right. To me, a soft reboot is kind of like a rebooting the whole series. This was not a reboot. It was like it makes no sense to do a timeline now because the first one says they finally come to Earth. Bumblebee was the only one. But all of a sudden now, we're always been on Earth. Hey! And we're like, where the fuck did this came from? So I understand what you're saying. It makes you confused. So here's my issue with you were saying. I agree, not disagreeing. I agree. They make the toy, they make the show around it, but that's where they lose good hardcore fans like myself and you and so on. I'm not saying you watch cartoons now, but I'm just saying if you did,
right.
But it goes back to all this stuff like, why would you do this? And that's where I'm gonna end it tonight, because I want to continue this conversation next week, because next week we're talking about cartoons versus real movies or reality show. You see where I'm going with this. I gotta find a better name for that.
Yeah.
So, but Paul, final thoughts, final plugins, we got.
No, I'm good. Again, great show. Definitely good to shake off the rust and talk about some of the classic stuff with people who can appreciate that. So, it's definitely always appreciate the conversation. But definitely looking forward to tomorrow night's show. Again, myself and Peter, aka Gooman in Reviews. We're going to be hosting the Gray Area, and I think tomorrow night. Now, I'm still fleshing out in terms of format, because I need to reach back out to BMU and see if that couple's still going to be available. But if not, if for whatever reason, if it doesn't pan out, I think we were just going to have an open mic show, and I think that one we're actually going to drop the link and have people kind of
yeah, I'm looking forward to it actually. Because I don't know if you saw Wednesday's show. Scam jumped on and he asked me a couple questions, and it was great conversation overall. But before I give my final thoughts, I want to give a shout out to BMU. BMU opened these doors for all of us, including how me and Paul made this lovely brotherhood. Now we call it. If it wasn't for BMU, Black Man Unfiltered, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I might be doing this by myself like an idiot, but the doors open. Like, I had Housewife on Wednesday. I had Grace, and I have so many of you guys coming from Trevor, whatever. I want to say thank you to BMU. He opened the doors for us.
Sure.
And he's doing some great stuff over there.
Like I said, a nice community, and I love how the community traveled. Like, I was just looking in the chat tonight. Lady Novoa goes everywhere. She gave us some love tonight. So it's just great.
She's one of the best.
Yeah, that we have these people who just selflessly just give themselves, to these platforms, and just tries to make us, be our best. So, really, support she gives us on our show. Last week, she said last week that was, certainly far the best. I mean, we only had a couple few shows, but that was like the best show yet that we got, and I expect them to continue to get better. But yes, this is a great environment, and for us to again, to share ideas. And I interesting, when you sent me that link earlier today about the shirt, I was thinking maybe one show we can add maybe towards the bookend is we never talked about pets. So
yeah, I like that idea.
I think that might be an interesting show to talk about.
Yeah, I have actually the one I actually want to add is want to bounce off this one actually is cartoons in Greece. How are they in different countries? That's another good topic too.
Yeah, we can talk. Right, we can certainly raise that in that space also. But pets, because again, for a lot of people may not know, one thing that me and Peter have, like the gray area that we do have in common, is that we are both beagle parents. So it's that's something like, what's the likelihood of that you got these two very different guys, but we're both proud owners of beagles and whatnot. So, but I was just thinking about today, how pets are looked at in Greece in terms of dogs and cats, and how do people have the love and affection for pets in Greece as they do here or whatnot, because so that could be an interesting topic to also break bread on and share cultural perspectives on that, because not everybody loves dogs, like even in this country, not everyone is a dog owner, but certainly in other countries they don't necessarily look at dogs and other animals in the same way as we may do here, and so that might be an interesting topic of conversation. I wouldn't mind broaching it.
Yeah, I would definitely love to have that conversation. And the thing also is, people don't realize me and Paul might be different, but we're alike too. So the part of that show is to break those walls. And I said last time on BMU's channel, I don't know if you caught me saying that, is let's stop, putting the titles on everything. Why is he Spanish? Why is he black? Why is he green? Break the titles away.
Well, I approach that a little bit differently. I love it all. I've always been culturally curious. I like exploring the differences
I agree.
and the similarities. So I love it. I love all of it. I think the harder thing to do, oftentimes, is to love differences, or to see the beauty in the differences of other things. Just like you would look at different flowers, for example.
Or
You
art.
know, you have roses, chrysanthemums. I can't even pronounce the names. Chrysanthemums or whatever you call them. I mean, but again,
Flowers.
like
They're
you can go
flowers
to
to
a
me.
garden. You can go to a garden, right, and see all these different. I think it's all good. I think it's all beautiful. I think ethnicity is beautiful. I think culture, in and of itself, is beautiful, and it's rooted again in our human experience and how people got to where they were. I think it's a story what is worth telling. So what I like about just the way we do our show, it's about us sharing our culture with one another, not comparing. And so the idea that we can, we can, gain that mutual understanding and respect from one another for our differences. But again, we find that gray area, we find that commonality. It's like, oh, y'all do that too, or y'all think about that too, or we can see we're still human beings. So again, nothing is going to ever trump my humanity. But the flavor that I give to the world, just like the flavor that Greeks give to the world or any other ethnic group, I love all. I want all of it. That's for me a higher thing. But when you try to make things cookie cutter where everyone's the same, it makes things easier to control. But the work that I think humanity has to do in general, just to understand other people, I think that's what I would like to drive in this conversation. So, I like the fact that everyone's different. Have your labels, but the important thing is, if you have a label, what's the story behind the label? Can you make it compelling so I can say, now I understand it. Now I have even more respect for it and for where, the origins of your people, where you come from, how you think, so that's the thing. The label is one thing, and because labels can be stolen, labels can be compromised, they can be totally changed from the original meanings. But part of telling the human experience is, can you add context and value to that what you're saying? Or are you only using it just as a wedge tool to keep people differently? But now this is part of our unique human experience that hopefully we can all learn from. And that's for me, that's where it's at. That's where I have fun. That's where I can go into so many different rooms and so many different conversations with people who I have no relation to. But I'm fascinated because I want to understand these people. I want to know how you guys got here. And if you think certain ways, how you think. So that's always been just a curiosity that I've always had. And just certainly in these spaces, I get to do more because, now that people are interacting again and, you meet people from wherever, but in this space here, you have even more opportunities to explore it. So what I'm hoping, like I said, if that couple comes on tomorrow night, again, they're from Liberia. I don't know anyone from Liberia. So
Me neither, to be honest with you.
forward. So I'm looking forward to, exchange, finding out, what makes them tick,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
some of those questions we talk about, So I'm looking forward to that.
See, that's what I love about you, bro. I'll be honest with you. Like, me and you have the same mindset. Like, we can grow together as human beings.
That's
Learn.
it.
Like, me and you were talking about going to Japan. I remember, like, we were talking about that culture one time. I'm like, hey, you know what'd be cool? Actually go to Greece and do an episode from Greece.
That would be fat also, yeah, for sure. A friend of mine, he just got back from there a couple of months ago. Him and his daughter went out there to Greece. They had a great time.
Oh, it's beautiful there, bro.
Out there. But yeah, that's history, brother. That's a lot of that's had a lot of impact on what we think today, from the philosophy to the culture to the whatever. So all of that is in play, and I think every culture, every person has a story to tell, has an experience that informs their thinking. And I think if we can just, as human beings, just have the patience and put the time in to have the conversation. That is what I'm looking to, my vision, like what I'm looking to foster in this space. We don't have to keep yelling at each other. There's too much toxicity out there.
That's what I love about my show. And I don't know if you saw
YouTube spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you went back and watched the replay of Wednesday's show. I got a compliment from Weiss and Grace say like your show is so mellow. Like you're always yelling and screaming. I don't want that because there's no point. I know we do it sometimes at the barbershop because we're guys and we're dumbasses, but
that's the barbershop though.
Yeah, the barbershop.
Again, that's the real. Again, I don't know. Like at least that's the black barbershop. Now again, I've never been to a white barbershop or a Greek barbershop or
Same shit.
Italian barbershop. I don't know if it's, but there's just this energy. I've seen literally brothers almost come to blows in a real barbershop, just debating stuff. And then before they leave, they pounding and hugging each other out and be like, all right, bro, I'll see you next week. Yeah, love you, boom, 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 and just out. So
I have a funny story in the barbershop. I'm gonna tell this next week when we're on it, but I want to tell you too.
Okay.
So the barbershop, Greek ones, they're if you're it depends on your team. You always wear your shirt. So the barber, one barber will wear the shirt, Panathinaikos, Olympiacos, and so on, right? Mm-hmm. So in Greece, the teams work like this. If it's Panathinaikos, it's soccer, basketball, all the same team have the same name. All right. So he would go in the back, change his shirt, come back out, had a different shirt on. I'm like, the fuck? So he got a better tip like that every time he cut the barber. Like if you're, let's say, a Ranger fan, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And he knows I'm a Jet fan. He'd go back, change his shirt, comes out with a Jet fan. I'm like, the fuck? And people usually catch him in the street wearing a different thing. I'm like, oh, you motherfucker. And people usually go, oh, sports and girls, oh, that's fighting words right there. I see people go blows. Yeah. And that's another episode we should have, sports in Greece, how different it is too. So, but this Wednesday, we're having a conversation about the evolution of dating. So join us. You do a BMU show on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I do a sports show at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So that when we usually wrap up by about 9:30 or so, and then I got usually some things to do after that. So when does your show come on? What time?
I'm debating on time. Last week I did 8:30, but I might push it back. But I was doing 9:30. You're more than welcome to come. Like always, this is your home too, brother. You know that.
Okay, thanks. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll try to swing on through.
Yeah,
and catch the conversation. I like I said, I'll probably jump in at midstream since like I said, I've been on the sports podcast, and I know this week we're doing our Super Bowl picks, and that's our.
Oh yeah, it's fine. If you don't make it at the beginning, it's fine. If I have people coming in and out all the time, talk to BMU because I know you talk to him a little more than I do. See if he wants to jump on. I like to get his side of this stuff.
Oh sure.
So except that
honestly, I don't see how he does it. Dude's got 6 kids, and he does all this extra stuff or whatever, and he's still able to do it. I don't see how he does it. I don't think I could have did it back in the day when my kids like 10 years ago or something. So how he does it, his wife must be fantastic. But that's a testament to him that he's able to do with all that activity and bustling things that he does. How he fits the time in, that's just unbelievable to me.
I give him credit because, like, again, I'm not talking shit. I'm just being honest. He's a great guy, and on top of it, all football, he coaches, he works, he does 7 days a week streaming. And I'm like, I can barely do 2. Shit, and do my videos on top of that. Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
I'm just praying it pays off because I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't have at least 50K subscribers right now for all the content that he's kicking out. For sure, definitely praying that he has a great growth this year because again, he's definitely put together it's not just a show. As I said, you have shows that do that, but he's got a platform. He's got multiple streams, multiple entities here that people could certainly benefit from, and it captures all aspects of life, and so that's what I'm hoping for him, that he can really blow this thing up, and I want to help him where I can with that. So
yeah, eventually, that's what the goal I'm going to, and like I want to turn this into like a network almost, like everybody have their own day and stuff like that. That's a goal. He actually, I got the idea from him. I got him credit for that too. But again, heads on, so again, we're doing history of dating this Wednesday. I will be posting the time on my Facebook group. Not sure yet. I will figure it out.
That's it.
Yeah, so I'll figure out. Let me talk to Hashim. Hashim should be back on Wednesday. He had a little bit of emergency to take care of, but everything's well. Everything's good with him, so he'll be back Wednesday. I spoke to him today, actually. So, except that I will try to get some more people on Wednesday and have a nice, healthy conversation. So, except that, let's stay fresh, and I'll see you guys next week.
Take care, guys. Have a great one. Take care.